Welcome to part two of this series. It wasn't designed as a two-part series. It's that Time Warner Cable sucks, and it just dropped our connection. So we're going to make it a two-part series. And Jeff,
Double your money.
What's that?
Double your money. $2 billion tips.
Yeah, it's double the money. And maybe I'll buy a cable network and provide broadband that doesn't crap out on you if I ever do get this money. But go ahead, Jeff. You were talking about a closer run and how that can happen in a 15-team league.
Right.
So,
Well, it's not just a 15-team league. It's a no-trade 15-team league. It's one that's part of a national contest. The NFBC is a special animal. The closer runs in the NFBC are breathtaking, and you don't want to get caught on the wrong end of it. You're in a tough spot because you're 28 picks between your back-to-back picks, so you almost feel compelled to do the double up sometimes, unless you're going early with a Kimbrel or a Jansen or something like that. If you're starting with a second-tier closer, you might not get any other second or even many third-tier closers coming back. I think it was 2 years ago, I did after the 10th round, top 150 players were gone, 23 closers were gone, 23. And the remaining closers were all gone by the end of the 13th round. It's that stark sometimes. So, you really have to be on your toes or you can be left behind. Last year I got stuck. I took Jason Mott as my second closer, saying, maybe he'll be back in a couple of weeks. I'll take a chance. I didn't get some of the other speculative closers or other ones I tried didn't work. It can be a disaster, and you don't want to punt that. You don't want to be left like having to get closers from the waiver wire. It's especially like if you've spent one early pick on a closer, you better get two, and really 2.5 is what you need. You do the number crunching. If you want to finish top 4 or 5 in that category, you need roughly 100 saves. That's not two closers unless you get Bobby Thigpen and some vintage quality of that, and another elite, all-time closer in terms of number of saves. It's just not going to happen. So you really need those two solid guys at least, and possibilities for a third.
right. And the problem with chasing them all year is that you're going to be carrying all these closers and waiting. That you're hoping to get the job while the regular guy's struggling, and they're worthless to you until they get that job. So those are roster spots you can't use. You're going to have injuries. They're going to clog up some roster spots. You're going to want to stream. You're going to want to speculate. You're going to want to have extra hitters to plug in for the weekend if there's a series in course and it's a good matchup against the pitching. So it really hamstrings you. And yeah, I almost think you got to go draft 3. But
I agree.
Maybe skimp on starting pitching, draft 3 closers, and just take a lot of pitchers in rounds 24 through 30 and hope 1 or 2 pan out, and you do some streaming during the year. And that's what you give up because you can't really afford to give up too much hitting. And you need the closers, and so something's got to give. It's got to be the pitching.
Right, and that's why there's so much currency in doing the 2 aces early plan if you can pull it off. Because once you get that base, those 2 elite ratios and strikeout guys, that gives you the freedom to stream those bottom spots. It gives you the freedom to carry 3 relievers. Especially, and there's going to be weeks when you're not going to have enough guys that have 2 start weeks or have good matchups that you're going to have 3 relievers active. Doesn't mean you have to have them active every single week. Sure, it'd be nice, but it's hard to time saves properly. Sure, you can get 7-game weeks versus 5-game weeks, and that can help a little bit. You can't do midweek changes with relievers either, with pitchers at all. So, as opposed to hitters where you can switch for the weekend, you can't do that with pitchers because if they want to force you to, if you're doing a 2-start week, to actually take both starts, make that decision on the matchups right early in advance. So it's a little trickier there, but I think it's definitely viable. You want to get 2 really solid guys and maybe a speculative third if you can, but don't wait too late on that third because they'll dry up too.
But here's the issue with the 2 starters, right? Because if you have to get 2 starters and 3 closers, and you have to do this all in the top 12 rounds probably, maybe you can get like a shaky closer in round 14.
Yeah.
That's a lot of hitting that you're not getting, right? Because you're using 5 picks on pitchers. Whereas if you go 1 elite starter and 3 closers, now you're only using 4 picks on pitchers, and you get a lot more hitting. Or if you go, the other way to go is kill 2 birds with 1 stone and get Kimbrel in the 4th. Let's say I get Kimbrel at 4-1. If he's there, he may not even be there. And then I get my 2 starters in 6 and 7, and now I've used 3 picks on pitchers, and I will have to use a 4th on another closer and probably a 5th on another closer. But at least all my biggest picks were on hitters, my top 3, and then pick 5. One of them on the 4 or 5 turn will be a hitter, and then maybe 8 or 9, one of those will be a hitter, another one will be a closer. So you get sort of your highest picks are used on hitting, and then your lower picks are used on speculative pitching, and you basically get elite starter quality out of the elite closer plus the just below elite starter.
Right. And, our colleague and friend Corey Schwartz from MLB.com has had a lot of success with that model. And the other thing, and I think there's value in this, is that you're kind of out of sequence with everybody else. You've already nailed that elite closer. You've gotten your second closer when some people are getting their first. And then you don't have to chase those in rounds 8, 9, and 10. That's when you can be loading up on a starting pitcher that you find equal to some of their guys. Maybe you think that Julio Teheran's just as good as Jordan Zimmermann. You're getting that in the 8th round as opposed to the 6th. There's value in that too. So that's definitely a different way to go. And that's just one example. Maybe you want to go even deeper, 10th or 11th. The only thing is I find it tough to not have those 2 rocks in the rotation, those 2 solid foundation guys in my rotation also. That you don't want to have 6 fluid spots or maybe 5 fluid spots in your pitchers every week. You want 2 or 3 fluid spots that you can kind of swap in and swap out. Ideally, that's the way I'd like to do it, but can't have everything. Every draft is a series of choices. We talk about this, and you have to make certain sacrifices. You have to decide what are you going to give up. I think that's almost as important as what are you going to target.
Right. It's like cut off my arm or cut off my leg, and cut off your arm, of course, but then if you're like a professional pianist, you got to go with the leg, It's not the same in all situations. The one thing I do like about avoiding that closer run in the middle is I hate it if I really like somebody. Let's say Wieters slips to around 11 or 12, and I happen to like Wieters this year, but I'm like, shit, if I don't deal with this closer run, I'm going to miss it, So
right.
I'm getting Wieters. Let's say I don't have a first baseman yet, so I get Matt Adams. Say there, Matt Adams and Wieters are really what I want, but I'm terrified to make those 2 picks at the turn because I only have 1 closer, right? If you somehow, and obviously using a higher pick makes it worse, but if you somehow are out of phase, the best value can be on those picks where everyone's forced to do something else. You always hate being forced to do something you don't want to do because you're giving up value. But if you get a Kimbrel whose value is so high anyway because of the ratios and the strikeouts and everything else, and you feel like you're getting value for him where he is, maybe you don't have to pay a little bit more than value for another closer just because he happens to be the guy. Plus, with Kimbrel, the job security is so huge, and a whole category of what closers provide, the most important one, which is saves, is totally tied to their job security. So,
right.
Nobody's guaranteed health, so Kimbrel's not guaranteed health, but he is guaranteed job security.
Now, say Kimbrel goes. Are you willing to do this same plan with Jansen or Holland or anybody else?
That's a little sketch. Maybe Jansen, not Holland, and obviously Chapman's hurt, and I wouldn't have been willing to do it with him anyway. So that's the issue. I trust Kimbrel far more than those other guys. Holland's done it 1 year. He was shaky early in the year. I know he's great the rest of the year. But relievers are fickle. Forget about closers. Relievers, period, are fickle. And Kimbrel's done it so many years now. He's done it 3 years that you start to have, knock on wood, anything could still happen, but he's gotten past that sort of, okay, this is a fluke thing. And those other guys really haven't. Jansen has done it for a couple of years as a reliever and then as a half closer last year. But, he only throws 92. I know he has that kind of Rivera-esque cutter. So maybe Jansen I might do it with. He'd be a possibility. But definitely I'd feel better doing it with Kimbrel.
I think you're going to find that it's going to be difficult for Kimbrel to get to you. I think today's mock was representative of that he went before your pick in the 4th round. Last year we were seeing him go late 40s, early 50s overall. A lot of people were doing that. I think I saw him go in the 3rd round in my main last year.
Right.
So don't be surprised if that happens. Whereas Jansen, I think you've got a legitimate chance of getting him.
Yeah, I got to look more into Jansen's numbers and what the deal is with him because I know the numbers are just as good, but is this sustainable in the way that it seems to be for Kimbrel?
It's a good question, and and that's just the thing is like. If not then when do you jump? I know you'll be unless there's a fluke of nature, you're going to be getting Joe Nathan somehow. So we know this.
Well,
so you can just we can just put that one in ink. We know it's indelible.
No, but it's not true because at 6'7" is probably what I'm going to have to take him. If he's there at 8'9", I'll probably get him, right? But 6'7", I'm not going to probably do that. You know what I mean?
I know. I'm just busting your chops. Yeah, I know. I'm just
saying
how much I know you like.
I like Nathan, and I will try to get him, but. Sometimes just where you draft, it doesn't fall to you. You
right.
Because it's definitely too early, and by the time you kind of feel good about taking him, he gets picked, a pick or two before you.
Right, exactly. It happens, and that's the nature of your spot in particular is you have to wait so long on those picks. You either have to reach, sometimes you'll get guys that fall to you, but you're either starting runs or you're reaching. I mean, and that's the thing that's kind of tricky a little bit there. And that's what makes it really tough. Sometimes the middles are better off that way.
Right. I'm picking, like, in other words, the rule is never, the only time you're really making a bad pick is if you take a guy that will definitely be there in the next round.
Right.
Well, so for me, it's like if a guy's not 30 picks above ADP, I can go ahead and take him. But if a guy's picking in the middle, he only has to be 15. He only has the 15 pick leeway to take him. So I could end up taking a lot more reaches, justifiably, but also it costs me. I'm overpaying more for so many guys. I do think there is an advantage, though, to having 2 in a row. I mean, you take 2 catchers, you take 2 closers. Being able to pick in combination is also an advantage. So, I think overall it may be a disadvantage to be on the corners, but I think there's an advantage to it. I kind of like it. And then, obviously getting Trout at 1-1 is just a huge advantage to start it off.
Exactly. You get at least $10 of value over everybody except for the guy in the second spot.
Right.
And that's a nice start.
Right. All right, Jeff. Well, I look forward to it, man. We're going to drive up tomorrow and get it done.
Yeah, let's do this.
All right. Let's see if we can cobble these two together into something. All right, Jeff. Thanks, dude.
All right, later.